The sun hung like a burning ember in the vast New Mexico sky, casting long shadows across the desert floor where Sam Mackenzie crouched behind a cluster of weathered sandstone rocks. His weathered hands gripped his Winchester rifle, knuckles white against the dark metal as he watched the scene unfolding in the valley below. The year was 1887, and the frontier still held its wild, untamed spirit despite the encroaching march of civilization. Sam had been tracking a wounded Mustang for 3 days, following its blood trail through the harsh terrain of what locals called Devil's Canyon. At 32, he had spent the better part of his adult life as a horse wrangler and occasional bounty hunter, a man who understood the language of survival that the desert spoke in whispers of wind and the harsh cry of circling vultures. His lean frame bore the scars of countless encounters with both man and beast, and his piercing blue eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had learned to read danger in the subtlest shift of shadows. What he saw below made his blood run cold. 7 men on horseback had surrounded a single Apache warrior, their voices carrying up the canyon walls in ugly, hateful tones. The Apache stood defiant despite being clearly outnumbered, his massive frame towering even among the mounted men. Sam estimated the warrior stood at least 6.5 feet tall, his broad shoulders and powerful build marking him as someone not to be underestimated. War paint streaked his angular face, and traditional Apache clothing suggested he was far from any reservation. "String him up, boys," called out one of the riders, a heavy-set man with a badge glinting on his vest. One less savage to worry about. Sam recognized the voice immediately. Deputy Marshal Tom Brennan, a man whose reputation for cruelty toward Native Americans was well known throughout the territory. Brennan had gathered a posse of local ranchers and drifters, men whose hearts had been hardened by years of conflict and loss. The Apache wars had left deep wounds on both sides, and, too often, innocent people paid the price for old hatreds. The Apache warrior stood perfectly still, his dark eyes scanning his captors with the calm assessment of a predator surrounded by prey. Despite the rope already fashioned into a noose in one rider's hands, the warrior showed no sign of fear. His presence commanded respect even in these dire circumstances, and Sam found himself admiring the man's courage in the face of certain death. "Hold on there, Tom," Sam called out, rising from his hiding place and walking down the rocky slope with deliberate slowness. His rifle remained lowered but ready, and every man in the group turned to watch his approach. No need for a lynching party today. Deputy Brennan's face twisted into a sneer as he recognized the newcomer. Well. Sam Mackenzie. Should have known you'd stick your nose where it don't belong." He spat into the dust, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. "This here's official business. Got ourselves a renegade Apache caught red-handed stealing cattle from the Morrison Ranch." Sam continued his steady approach, his eyes never leaving Brennan's face. He had dealt with the corrupt deputy before, and each encounter had left him with a deeper distaste for the man's methods. "Funny thing about that, Tom. I've been tracking a wounded Mustang through this area for 3 days, and I haven't seen hide nor hair of any cattle. Matter of fact, the Morrison Ranch is a good 20 miles east of here." The Apache warrior's eyes shifted to Sam, and, for a moment, their gazes met. In that brief exchange, Sam saw intelligence, dignity, and perhaps a flicker of surprise. The warrior had not expected intervention from a white man, especially not one willing to stand against 7 armed riders. "You calling me a liar, Mackenzie?" Brennan's voice carried a dangerous edge, and the other riders began spreading out, hands moving closer to their weapons. Sam stopped about 30 feet from the group, close enough to be heard clearly but far enough to have room to maneuver if things went badly. "I'm calling it like I see it. This man isn't carrying any stolen goods, and you're a long way from your jurisdiction." He glanced at the other riders, recognizing several faces. "Jake Morrison, your cattle still on your property?" A younger man with sun-bleached hair shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Well, yes, they are. But Tom here said this Apache was scouting our herds, planning a raid." "Planning a raid by himself?" Sam's tone carried a hint of incredulity. "That's either the bravest or the stupidest Apache alive. Which do you figure him for?" The tension in the air grew thick as desert heat. Sam knew he was walking a dangerous line, but something about the Apache warrior's bearing commanded his respect. In his years on the frontier, he had learned to judge men by their character rather than their race, a philosophy that had served him well but also made him enemies among those who preferred simpler, more hateful solutions to complex problems.
"This doesn't concern you, Mackenzie," Brennan growled. "Ride on, and we'll forget you were here." "Can't do that, Tom."
Sam's voice remained steady, but his grip tightened on his rifle.
"I won't stand by and watch you lynch an innocent man."
The Apache warrior spoke for the first time, his voice deep and resonant, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "You risk much for a stranger, white man."
"Why?"
Sam glanced at the warrior, noting the intelligence in his eyes and the careful way he positioned himself despite being surrounded.
"Because it's the right thing to do. And because I've got a feeling you're no ordinary renegade." A bitter laugh escaped Brennan's lips.
"You always were soft on the Indians, Mackenzie."
"Cost you that job with the territorial marshal, didn't it?" The reference stung because it was true.
Sam had lost his position as a deputy marshal 2 years earlier when he refused to participate in a raid on a peaceful Apache camp. The incident had cost him his badge, his reputation among certain circles, and his relationship with Sarah Whitman, the banker's daughter who had decided she couldn't marry a man who wouldn't put his own race first.
"Maybe so," Sam acknowledged. "But I can still sleep at night."
The standoff stretched on, each man calculating odds and consequences. The Apache warrior remained motionless, but Sam could see the subtle tension in his muscles, the way his weight shifted almost imperceptibly onto the balls of his feet.
Whatever happened next, the man would not go down without a fight.
"You're outnumbered 7-1, Mackenzie," Brennan stated the obvious. "Even with your reputation, those aren't good odds."
Sam smiled grimly. "Depends on how you count."
"See, I figure this Apache here is worth at least 3 of you in a fight."
"That makes it more like 7-4.
"Still not great, but I've faced worse odds." The warrior's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Despite the language barrier and cultural differences, he clearly understood the nature of the challenge being issued on his behalf.
"This is your last warning, Mackenzie." Brennan's hand moved to his pistol grip.
"Walk away now, or we'll plant you right alongside the savage."
Sam's response was to slowly raise his rifle, the click of the hammer being pulled back echoing clearly in the desert air.
"First man who draws is going to find out just how good I am with this Winchester. And, Tom, you know damn well I don't miss." The truth of that statement hung heavy in the air.
Sam Mackenzie's skill with firearms was legendary throughout the territory.
He had once put 6 shots through a silver dollar at 100 yards, and his quick draw had saved his life more times than he cared to count. Even Brennan, for all his bluster, knew better than to test those skills lightly. "You're making a big mistake," Brennan warned, but uncertainty had crept into his voice.
"Maybe," Sam agreed. "But it's my mistake to make." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring, 7 armed men facing one determined cowboy and an unarmed Apache warrior.
The desert wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the scent of sage and the distant cry of a hawk. In that suspended instant, the fate of 3 men hung in the balance, waiting for someone to make the first move that would determine whether the day would end in justice or bloodshed. The Apache warrior chose that moment to speak again, his words directed at Sam but loud enough for all to hear.
"I am Nailnish of the Chiricahua. My father is Chief Cochilo. You show honor, white man."
"If we survive this day, I will not forget." The revelation sent a ripple of unease through the posse. Chief Cochilo was known throughout the territory as a powerful leader who had managed to keep his small band free from the reservations through a combination of diplomacy and strategic retreats. If this was truly his son, killing him would bring swift and terrible retribution upon anyone involved. "Well now," Sam said quietly, his rifle still trained on Brennan.
"Seems like you boys might have bitten off more than you can chew. Chief Cochilo's son isn't likely to be missed, and I don't reckon you want a war party tracking you down."
Brennan's face had gone pale beneath his weathered tan. The political implications of lynching a chief's son were staggering, potentially triggering renewed hostilities just when the territory was enjoying a fragile peace. His posse members began exchanging nervous glances, their earlier enthusiasm for violence rapidly cooling.
Could be lying, one of the writers suggested weakly. Could be, Sam agreed. But, are you willing to bet your life on it? Because that's exactly what you'd be doing.
The standoff continued, but the dynamics had shifted dramatically. What had begun as 7 against 1 had become something far more complex, with consequences that extended far beyond this isolated canyon. Sam could see the wheels turning in Brennan's head as the deputy calculated the political costs of his actions against his personal hatred of Native Americans.
Finally, it was Jake Morrison who broke the silence. Tom, maybe we should just let this go. If he's really Cochillo's son.
Shut up, Jake, Brennan snapped, but the authority had gone out of his voice.
Sam sensed the moment of maximum danger approaching.
Brennan was cornered now, his reputation and authority challenged in front of his men. A man like that was capable of anything, including suicidal violence if he felt his position was threatened beyond recovery. Tell you what, Tom, Sam offered, his voice reasonable and calm.
Why don't you and your boys ride on back to town?
I'll make sure Nailnish here gets safely back to his people. No harm done, no reports filed, no questions asked.
It was a face-saving offer, giving Brennan a way out that didn't completely destroy his authority.
For a long moment, the deputy stared at Sam with naked hatred, his hand still hovering over his pistol grip. This isn't over, Mackenzie, he finally said, his voice tight with suppressed rage.
Not by a long shot.
Didn't expect it would be, Sam replied evenly. Brennan wheeled his horse around with unnecessary violence, spurring the animal into a gallop that sent dust billowing in all directions. One by one, his men followed, though several cast nervous glances back at the Apache warrior who stood watching their retreat with impassive dignity. When the last rider had disappeared around the canyon bend, Sam slowly lowered his rifle and turned to face Nailnish. The Apache warrior studied him with dark eyes that seemed to look straight through to his soul. You have made enemies today, Nailnish observed, his English surprisingly good despite a slight accent.
Not my first batch, Sam replied with a shrug. Probably won't be my last either.
Nailnish nodded slowly, as if confirming something he had already suspected.
You are not like other white men I have known.
Most white men aren't like most white men, if you know what I mean, Sam said. We're all just trying to make our way in the world, same as your people. The Apache warrior considered this for a moment, then stepped forward and extended his hand in the white man's gesture of greeting.
I am in your debt, Sam Mackenzie. Sam clasped the offered hand, surprised by the warrior's knowledge of his name and impressed by the strength of his grip. No debt between us. Any decent man would have done the same.
No, Nailnish said firmly.
Any decent man would have wanted to do the same.
Few would have had the courage to act.
There is a difference.
They stood together in the desert silence, two men from different worlds united by a moment of shared humanity. Sam found himself wondering about this Apache warrior who spoke English well and carried himself with the bearing of natural leadership. There was more to Nailnish than met the eye, and something told Sam their paths would cross again. Your horse, Sam said suddenly, noticing for the first time that the Apache was on foot in the middle of hostile territory.
Where is your mount? Nailnish's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Shot from under me 3 days ago. I have been walking since then. 3 days? Sam's respect for the man's endurance grew. In this heat, without water?
There are ways, Nailnish replied simply. My people have survived in this desert for countless generations.
Sam nodded, understanding.
The Apache knowledge of desert survival was legendary, passed down through generations of warriors who had learned to find water in the most unlikely places and to travel vast distances on foot when necessary. Well, you're welcome to share my camp tonight, Sam offered. I've got water, food, and a good spot picked out about 2 miles north of here. Nailnish studied him carefully, as if weighing the wisdom of trusting a white man so completely.
You would share your fire with an Apache?
I just shared my fight with an Apache, Sam pointed out.
Seems like sharing a campfire would be the easy part.
For the first time since Sam had laid eyes on him, Nailnish smiled. It was a genuine expression that transformed his stern features and revealed the intelligent, thoughtful man beneath the warrior's facade.
Then, I accept your hospitality, Sam Mackenzie.
But, know that in doing so, you bind yourself to Apache custom as well as white man's courtesy. Sam wasn't entirely sure what that meant, but something in the warrior's tone suggested it was significant. Still, he had committed himself to helping this man, and he wasn't about to back down now. "Lead the way," he said, gesturing toward the north. As they walked together through the cooling desert air, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that this day had changed something fundamental in his life. He had made enemies, certainly, but perhaps he had also made something far more valuable. In saving Nailnish, he had acted according to his deepest principles, and, for the first time in years, he felt truly proud of his choices. The campfire crackled softly in the desert night, casting dancing shadows across the red rock walls of the small canyon where Sam had made his camp. The spot was well chosen, hidden from casual observation but with clear sightlines in all directions. A small spring provided fresh water, and the overhanging rocks offered protection from both the elements and prying eyes. Sam sat across the fire from Nailnish, studying the Apache warrior's face in the flickering light. Over the past few hours, as they had shared a simple meal of beans, hardtack, and coffee, he had learned much about his unexpected companion. Nailnish was not just the son of Chief Cochilo, but a war leader in his own right, respected among his people for both his tactical brilliance and his efforts to find peaceful solutions to the ongoing conflicts with white settlers. "Tell me about your family," Sam said, refilling both their coffee cups from the battered pot that sat at the fire's edge. Nailnish was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes reflecting the flames as he considered the question. "My father leads our people with wisdom and strength. He has seen many changes in his lifetime, the coming of the white man, the wars, the reservations. He seeks always to protect our way of life while understanding that the world around us changes whether we will it or not." "And your mother?" "Died when I was young. Sickness brought by white settlers." There was no accusation in Nailnish's voice, just a statement of fact, but Sam felt the weight of collective guilt nonetheless. "I'm sorry," Sam said simply. "I know words don't change anything, but I'm sorry for your loss." Nailnish nodded acknowledgement of the sympathy. "She was a wise woman. She taught me that strength comes not from the ability to destroy one's enemies, but from the wisdom to turn enemies into allies when possible." "Sounds like she was a remarkable person." "She was. And she would have approved of what you did today." Nailnish took a sip of his coffee, grimacing slightly at the bitter taste. "You risked much for a stranger. In my culture, such an act creates bonds that cannot be easily broken." Something in the warrior's tone made Sam look up sharply. "What kind of bonds?" "Among my people, when someone saves the life of another, particularly in the face of great personal danger, it creates what we call nihi. Nailnish paused, searching for the right words in English. "It is difficult to translate exactly. A sacred obligation, perhaps. A connection between souls that demands honor and respect." Sam shifted uncomfortably. He had acted according to his conscience, not seeking any reward or recognition. The idea that his actions might have committed him to something he didn't understand made him uneasy. "I didn't do it expecting anything in return," he said carefully. "Of course not. That is precisely why the bond is sacred." Nailnish set down his coffee cup and looked directly at Sam. "You acted from honor alone, with no thought of gain. Such actions create the strongest obligations." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each man lost in his own thoughts. Sam found himself thinking about his life, about the choices he had made and the paths he had chosen. At 32, he was a man without deep roots, drifting from job to job and place to place. His reputation as a straight shooter and an honest man had earned him respect in some quarters, but it had also cost him opportunities and relationships. "What about you?" Nailnish asked, as if reading his thoughts. "Tell me about your family." "Don't have much of one," Sam admitted. "Parents died when I was 16. Cholera outbreak in Kansas. Been on my own ever since." "No wife? No children?" Sam shook his head. "Came close once. Girl named Sarah Whitman back in Tucson. But she decided she couldn't marry a man who wouldn't put his own race first in all things."
And you could not do this?
Wouldn't, Sam corrected.
Right is right, regardless of the color of a man's skin. My father taught me that, and I've never seen reason to change my mind. Nailnish nodded slowly. Your father was a wise man.
It is easier to hate than to understand, easier to fear than to respect. You chose the harder path. Sometimes feels like I chose the lonely path, Sam said with a rueful smile. Perhaps. But loneliness born of principle is preferable to companionship built on compromise of one's deepest beliefs. They were interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, the iron-shod hooves ringing against stone in the clear night air. Both men were instantly alert, Sam reaching for his rifle while Nailnish melted into the shadows with the fluid grace of a natural warrior.
Sam Mackenzie.
The voice that called out was familiar, though not necessarily welcome.
We know you're in there. Come out and talk. Sam recognized the voice of Sheriff John Morrison, Jake's older brother and the elected law enforcement official for the entire county.
Unlike Deputy Brennan, Morrison had a reputation for fairness and level-headedness, but he was also a practical politician who understood the delicate balance of territorial politics. Evening, John, Sam called back, not moving from his position behind the rocks.
Kind of late for a social call, isn't it? This isn't social, Sam. Need to talk to you about what happened today. Sam glanced toward the shadows where Nailnish had disappeared.
The Apache warrior was invisible in the darkness, but Sam could feel his presence, watching and waiting for any sign of treachery.
Come ahead, Sam said finally.
But come alone and keep your hands visible. Sheriff Morrison appeared in the firelight a moment later, his hands raised peacefully. He was a tall, lean man in his 40s, with graying hair and the weathered features of someone who had spent his life under the southwestern sun. His badge glinted in the firelight, and Sam noted that his holster was tied down, suggesting he took the potential for violence seriously.
Where's your Apache friend?
Morrison asked, his eyes scanning the shadows. Around, Sam replied noncommittally.
What's this about, John? The sheriff sighed and gestured toward the fire. Mind if I sit? It's been a long day. Sam nodded, keeping his rifle ready but not obviously threatening.
Morrison settled himself cross-legged by the fire and pulled out a silver flask, taking a small sip before offering it to Sam. Tom Brennan came to see me tonight, Morrison began without preamble. He's claiming you threatened him and his men while they were trying to apprehend a renegade Apache.
That his version? Sam asked, declining the flask with a shake of his head. Among other things. He wants me to arrest you for interfering with a lawful posse. Sam snorted. Lawful posse. That what you call a lynch mob these days?
Morrison's expression remained carefully neutral.
Tom can be overzealous.
But he had some of the local ranchers with him, and they're claiming the Apache was scouting their cattle herds.
20 miles away from the nearest cattle? That's some impressive scouting. I know, Sam. I know.
Morrison rubbed his forehead wearily.
But there's more.
Word's already spread that you helped a hostile Apache escape justice.
Some folks in town are pretty worked up about it.
Sam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night air. He had known there would be consequences for his actions, but he hadn't anticipated how quickly the story would spread or how distorted it would become.
He wasn't hostile, John.
He was one man on foot in the middle of nowhere, not carrying any stolen goods or weapons. Brennan and his boys were fixing to lynch him for the crime of being Apache. Maybe so, Morrison agreed quietly. But perception matters as much as reality in situations like this.
And the perception is that you sided with an Indian over your own people. From the darkness came Nailnish's voice, calm and authoritative.
Perhaps it is time I spoke for myself. Morrison's hand moved instinctively toward his gun as the Apache warrior stepped into the firelight. Even prepared for the man's size, the sheriff was visibly impressed by Nailnish's commanding presence. You must be Chief Cochilo's son, Morrison said after a moment. I am Nailnish, war leader of the Chiricahua, son of Cochilo. The Apache's English was formal but clear.
And I am not hostile to those who show honor. Morrison studied the warrior carefully. Tom Brennan claims you were scouting cattle herds, planning raids.
Tom Brennan speaks with the tongue of a liar and the heart of a coward, Nailnish replied without heat. I was returning to my people from a meeting with the Indian agent at San Carlos. I carry papers from your government if you wish to see them. The revelation caught both white men by surprise. If Nailnish had been on official business with the reservation authorities, Brennan's actions bordered on the criminal.
You were at San Carlos? Morrison asked. What kind of business?
Nailnish reached slowly into his shirt and withdrew a folded document, handing it to the sheriff. Morrison unfolded the paper and read it by firelight, his expression growing increasingly troubled.
This is a safe passage document signed by Agent Crawford, he said finally.
It specifically states that you're traveling under government protection on official tribal business.
Sam felt a surge of vindication, but also a growing concern. If Nailnish had been carrying official papers, why hadn't he shown them to Brennan's posse?
The answer, when it came to him, only deepened his worry. They wouldn't have cared, would they? He asked.
Brennan and his boys.
They had their minds made up before they ever saw those papers.
Nailnish nodded grimly.
I have learned that papers mean little to men whose hearts are filled with hate. Sometimes it is better to face death with dignity than to beg for mercy from those who have already decided your fate. Morrison folded the document carefully and handed it back to the Apache.
This changes things considerably.
If Tom had seen these papers, he would have found some reason why they didn't matter, Sam interrupted. You know as well as I do that Brennan's been looking for an excuse to start trouble with the Apache. This was just his chance. The sheriff was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire as he weighed the political implications of the situation. Finally, he looked up at both men. Here's what's going to happen, he said slowly.
Officially, I never found you, Sam.
I came out here following up on Tom's complaint, but you and your friend had already moved on.
I have no idea where you went. Sam felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. And, unofficially?
Unofficially, you need to get Nailnish back to his people as quickly and quietly as possible. The longer he stays in the territory, the more chance there is for real trouble. Some of the ranchers are already talking about organizing a larger posse.
Nailnish spoke up. I can find my own way home, Sheriff Morrison.
There is no need for Sam Mackenzie to involve himself further.
Actually, there is, Morrison replied.
If you travel alone and something happens to you, my county will be blamed regardless of the circumstances. If Sam escorts you safely back to your people, it shows good faith on our part. Sam understood the political calculus behind the sheriff's reasoning, but he also sensed there was something Morrison wasn't telling them. What else, John? He asked.
What aren't you saying?
Morrison hesitated, then seemed to reach a decision.
Word came down from the territorial governor's office yesterday.
There's going to be a new peace treaty negotiated with the Apache tribes, and Chief Cochilo's band is considered crucial to the success of those negotiations.
The implications hit Sam immediately.
Nailnish wasn't just the son of a minor chief, he was potentially a key figure in upcoming peace talks that could affect the entire territory.
So if something happened to him, Sam began.
It could derail the entire peace process, Morrison finished.
And that's not something any of us can afford.
Nailnish had listened to this exchange with growing understanding. You wish me to return home not for my safety, but for the safety of your peace negotiations.
Morrison nodded. Both, actually.
But I won't lie to you about the political considerations involved. The Apache warrior was quiet for a moment, then looked directly at Sam.
And you, Sam Mackenzie? Will you escort me home for political reasons, or for reasons of honor?
It was a fair question, and one that deserved an honest answer. Sam looked at this proud, intelligent man who had faced death with dignity and shown more honor in a few hours than most men displayed in a lifetime.
I'll escort you home because it's the right thing to do, Sam said simply. The politics don't matter to me one way or the other.
Nailnish smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. Then, I accept your escort, Sam Mackenzie. And, I warn you now that by doing so, you may find yourself more involved with my people than you expect. Morrison stood, dusting off his pants. I'll give you a 3-day head start before I file my official report. After that, I can't control what Tom Brennan or anyone else might do. 3 days should be enough, Sam said, already calculating distances and routes in his head. The sheriff mounted his horse and looked down at the two men by the fire. Sam, I hope you know what you're doing. This could change everything for you. Already has, Sam replied. Might as well see where it leads. After Morrison had ridden away, Sam and Nailnish sat in contemplative silence, each man aware that they stood at a crossroads that would affect the rest of their lives. There is something you should know, Nailnish said finally. About Apache customs and the obligations they create. Sam looked up, sensing the importance of what was coming. When we reach my people, my father will wish to honor you for saving my life. Such honor among the Apache is not a simple thing. It carries responsibilities and complications. What kind of complications? Nailnish hesitated, as if struggling with how to explain something fundamental about his culture to an outsider. My father has 3 daughters and only 1 son. In our tradition, a man who saves the life of a chief's son becomes family. The bonds created cannot be broken. Sam felt a chill of apprehension. What exactly are you trying to tell me? I am telling you that by saving my life, you may have done more than rescue a single Apache warrior. You may have changed the course of both our people's futures. The journey to Chief Cochilo's camp took 2.5 days of hard riding through some of the most spectacular and dangerous terrain in the Southwest. Sam had provided Nailnish with his spare horse, a sturdy Mustang named Thunder that had served him well on many previous adventures. As they rode deeper into Apache territory, Sam found himself increasingly impressed by his companion's knowledge of the land and his ability to find paths through seemingly impassable mountain terrain. They traveled mostly in comfortable silence, two men who had discovered a mutual respect that transcended the cultural barriers between them. When they did speak, it was often about the land itself, the subtle signs that revealed water sources or safe campsites, the tracks that told stories of the animals and people who had passed this way before them. On the evening of the second day, as they made camp in a sheltered canyon beside a clear stream, Nailnish finally broke the silence that had grown between them regarding their destination. You are troubled, the Apache warrior observed as they shared a meal of venison jerky and wild onions that he had gathered during their journey. Sam looked up from the fire he was tending, meeting Nailnish's perceptive gaze. Just thinking about what lies ahead. You mentioned complications, but you've been pretty vague about what those might be. Nailnish nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting this conversation. It is difficult to explain Apache ways to one who has not lived among us. Your people and mine see the world very differently. Try me, Sam encouraged. I've learned to keep an open mind about different ways of doing things. The Apache warrior was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames as he gathered his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of cultural tradition and personal concern. Among my people, there are sacred obligations that bind individuals and families together across generations. When a man saves the life of another, particularly the life of a chief's son, it creates bonds that cannot be broken by time or distance. Sam waited, sensing that there was much more to come. My father, Chief Cochilo, is a traditional man who honors the old ways. When he learns what you have done, he will insist on honoring you according to our customs. This is not optional. It is a sacred duty that he cannot ignore without losing face among our people. What kind of honor are we talking about? Sam asked, though something in Nailnish's tone suggested he might not want to hear the answer. Adoption into our tribe. Full membership in our clan. And? Nailnish hesitated, then forged ahead. Marriage to one of my sisters. Sam nearly choked on his coffee. Marriage? Wait, hold on there. I didn't agree to anything like that. It is not a matter of agreement, Nailnish explained patiently. It is a matter of honor and tradition. By saving my life, You have proven yourself worthy of the highest honor my father can bestow. To refuse would be an insult that could destroy any chance of peace between our peoples." Sam set down his cup with shaking hands, his mind reeling from the implications. "So you're saying that because I did what any decent man would do, I'm now obligated to marry someone I've never met?" "One of three someones, actually," Nailnish corrected with what might have been a hint of humor. "My father will allow you to choose among my sisters. It is considered a great honor." "This is insane," Sam muttered, running his hands through his hair. "There has to be another way." Nailnish studied his friend with sympathetic understanding. "I know this is difficult for you to accept. Your culture and mine have very different ideas about individual choice and family obligations. But you must understand that among my people, the bonds created by your actions today are considered sacred. They cannot be dissolved by personal preference or convenience." Sam stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of their small campfire's light. The vast darkness of the desert stretched out before him, filled with mysteries and dangers that suddenly seemed far less threatening than the conversation he was having. "What if I just turned around and rode away?" he asked without looking back. "What if I never showed up at your father's camp?" "Then, you would be forever marked as a man without honor," Nailnish replied sadly. "And the chance for lasting peace between our peoples would be lost. My father would see your rejection as proof that white men cannot be trusted, that their word means nothing when tested by true obligation." Sam turned back to face the Apache warrior, his expression torn between anger and resignation. "So I'm trapped. Save your life and lose my freedom, or abandon you and destroy any chance for peace." "You are not trapped," Nailnish said firmly. "You are faced with a choice that will define who you are as a man. Some choices in life are easy, Sam Mackenzie. This is not one of them. But the difficult choices are the ones that reveal our true character." They sat in tense silence for several minutes, the crackling of the fire the only sound in the vast desert night. Sam's mind raced through options and consequences, trying to find some way out of the impossible situation he found himself in. "Tell me about your sisters," he said finally, his voice resigned. Nailnish's expression softened with relief and, perhaps, a touch of approval. "Ayana is the eldest, 26 summers. She is wise and strong, a gifted healer who has saved many lives among our people. She has been married before, but her husband died in battle 3 years ago. She has one child, a daughter of 8 summers." Sam nodded, trying to process this information objectively. "And the others?" "Chenoa is 24 summers, a woman of great beauty and spirit. She is skilled in all the traditional women's arts but also trained as a warrior. She can shoot a bow as accurately as any man and has fought beside our warriors when our village was threatened. She has never been married, by her own choice. Many men have sought her hand, but she has rejected them all." "Sounds formidable," Sam observed. "Indeed. The youngest is Casa, 22 summers. She is gentle and kind, with a gift for working with horses that surpasses even my own. She sees beauty in everything and brings joy to all who know her. She also has never married, though not from lack of suitors." Sam tried to imagine meeting these 3 women, tried to picture himself choosing one of them to be his wife based on nothing more than a brief introduction and cultural obligation. The enormity of it overwhelmed him. "This is madness," he said finally. "I can't just choose a wife like I'm picking out a horse at market." "It is not so different from how marriages are arranged in many cultures," Nailnish pointed out. "Love often grows from respect and shared experience. Many of the happiest marriages among my people began as practical alliances that developed into deep affection over time." "But what about what they want?" Sam asked. "What if none of your sisters wants to marry a white cowboy who stumbled into their lives by accident?" Nailnish smiled at this question. "You underestimate the honor that would come to whichever sister you chose. To be selected by the man who saved the chief's son would bring great status and respect. They would not see it as a burden, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to be tied to a man they don't know and might not even like," Sam countered. "Perhaps. Or an opportunity to help forge a lasting peace between our peoples."
My sisters understand duty and honor as well as any warrior.
They would not shrink from such a responsibility. Sam resumed his seat by the fire, his shoulders sagging with the weight of impossible choices.
What happens if I go through with this? If I actually marry one of your sisters? What kind of life would that be?
That would depend largely on you, Nailnish replied thoughtfully. You could live among our people, learn our ways, become truly Apache. Many white men have done so over the years. Or you could build a life that honored both cultures, spending time with both peoples.
And if the marriage doesn't work out? If we're both miserable? Nailnish considered this carefully. Divorce is not unknown among our people, though it brings shame to both families.
But such matters are rarely necessary when both parties approach the union with honor and genuine effort to make it succeed. The conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of horses approaching. Both men were instantly alert, moving away from the fire and into defensive positions. In the wilderness, unexpected visitors could mean anything from lost travelers to hostile raiders.
Sam Mackenzie.
The voice that called out was female, young, and spoke English with only a slight accent.
Nailnish. We know you are there. Come out so we may speak. Nailnish's expression showed surprise and, perhaps a touch of concern. That is Chenoa's voice. My sister. Your sister? What's she doing out here? I do not know.
But she would not have come alone, and she would not have come without good reason. They emerged from cover cautiously, and Sam got his first glimpse of one of the women he might be expected to marry.
Chenoa was indeed beautiful, with long black hair that gleamed in the moonlight and intelligent dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once.
She was dressed for travel and combat, with a rifle across her back and a knife at her belt. Behind her, Sam could make out 3 Apache warriors, all mounted and ready for trouble.
Brother, she said, dismounting and approaching Nailnish with obvious relief.
We feared you were dead when you did not return when expected.
I was delayed, Nailnish replied, embracing his sister warmly. But I am unharmed, thanks to this man.
He gestured toward Sam, who stepped forward uncertainly. Chenoa turned her attention to Sam, studying him with an intensity that made him distinctly uncomfortable. Her gaze seemed to catalogue every detail of his appearance and bearing, weighing and measuring him according to criteria he could only guess at. So you are the white man who saved my brother's life, she said finally. Her English was fluent, with only a slight accent that somehow made it more musical than the harsh frontier dialect Sam was accustomed to. I'm Sam Mackenzie, he replied, unsure of the appropriate protocol for this situation. I know who you are, Chenoa said calmly.
Your reputation precedes you, Sam Mackenzie.
They say you are a man of honor who treats all people fairly, regardless of their race. I try to be, Sam said simply.
My father sent us to find Nailnish and ensure his safe return, Chenoa continued.
He also sent a message specifically for you.
Sam felt his stomach tighten with apprehension. What message?
He says to tell you that the debt of honor created by your actions can only be settled in the traditional way. He invites you to come to our village as an honored guest, so that proper arrangements can be made. Sam glanced at Nailnish, who nodded solemnly. There was no escaping the cultural obligations that had been set in motion by his decision to intervene in that canyon 2 days ago.
And if I refuse the invitation? Sam asked, though he already knew the answer.
Then, you would prove yourself to be a man without honor, and the consequences would extend far beyond yourself, Chenoa replied without emotion. The peace negotiations would fail, and many people on both sides would suffer for your lack of courage.
The bluntness of her statement hit Sam like a physical blow.
In saving one man's life, he had apparently accepted responsibility for the hopes and dreams of 2 entire peoples. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing.
I understand, he said finally.
I'll come to your village and meet with your father.
Chenoa nodded approvingly. Wise.
You will not regret this decision, Sam Mackenzie. My father is a fair man who honors those who honor him. As they prepared to continue their journey together, Sam found himself riding beside Chenoa, trying to reconcile the reality of his situation with the choices that had led him here. This proud, intelligent woman might soon be his wife, bound to him by traditions he barely understood and obligations he had never sought. "You are troubled," Chenoa observed as they rode through the moonlit desert.
"Wouldn't you be?" Sam replied. "2 days ago I was a simple horse wrangler.
Now I'm apparently about to become part of an Apache family and a key figure in peace negotiations. Sometimes the spirits place us in situations that test our character," Chenoa said thoughtfully. "The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others."
"Perhaps this is your test, Sam Mackenzie." "My test?" "To see if you have the courage to become the man you were meant to be, rather than remaining the man you think you are." As they continued through the night toward Chief Cochilo's village, Sam pondered Chenoa's words. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps this impossible situation was indeed a test, not of his willingness to sacrifice his freedom, but of his courage to embrace a destiny he had never imagined. By the time the sun rose over the mountains ahead, Sam had reached a decision that would change his life forever. He would meet with Chief Cochilo, honor the traditions that his actions had invoked, and face whatever consequences might come. In choosing to save Nailnish, he had discovered something fundamental about his own character. Now it was time to see where that character would lead him. The man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. As the Apache village came into view in the distance, Sam Mackenzie prepared to find out exactly what kind of man he truly was.